Hi, this is Vince with ARA, and this is ARA Unscripted. In this episode, we sit down with Mike Kunkel, one of the most outspoken and influential voices in the auto recycling industry, for a wide-ranging, no-holds-barred conversation. From the realities of today's salvage market to the hard lessons learned over decades of building, breaking, and rebuilding businesses, this discussion goes far beyond surface-level industry talk. It's an honest look at what it really takes to survive and thrive when the easy money's gone. This episode is sponsored by Online Parts Depot. If you're running a salvage yard, you already know that listing on eBay can be a powerful growth opportunity, but managing it properly takes serious time and effort. Keeping thousands of listings accurate, responding to constant customer questions, and maintaining strong search visibility can quickly become a job of its own. That's where Online Parts Depot comes in. They aren't just a software tool. They are a full-scale eBay management powerhouse. They handle the heavy lifting, from professional listing optimization and inventory syncing to expert customer support, all designed to turn your yard into a high-velocity digital storefront. Stop managing listings and start managing your growth. Let the experts at Online Parts Depot scale your eBay presence while you focus on sourcing. Visit them today at www.onlinepartsdepot.net or email Matt at matthamlin@onlinepartsdepot.net for a free demo and a walkthrough of how it all works. All right, we're rolling. Well, Mike, thanks so much for making the trip in. When did you come in, last night?
Last night.
And where'd you come from?
I'm working my way back to Texas from Arizona, so this was kind of on the way.
And you just didn't you and your wife just move to Arizona?
My wife's recently retired, and so she's picked Arizona as a spot she likes to spend a lot of time. And with Winter Armageddon a couple of weeks ago, she's pretty proud of herself right at the moment about picking Arizona and having rode all of that out. And,
yeah, I bet. Texas,
nice weather.
Texas
got hammered.
Yeah.
So, look, in the end, it should be a good thing, right? I mean, you don't do what we do for long and not understand that the weather has a big impact on what it is. And winter means something to everybody, right?
No matter where you are.
No matter where you are, rather, whether it be cold temperatures or snow or ice or you know what. And right now is a very interesting time to be an auto recycler, right? Everybody knows the COVID era was a very good era for auto recycling. We did very well in there. Mm-hmm. Well, life has a way of working highs with lows and things balance back up. And now all of a sudden we're in a period where things are being more challenging. And so weather certainly has an impact on that and can potentially jumpstart it. So, wow, it's bad. And, you know, to go through all of that and the shutdowns and the thing. But at the end of the day, it's good for business. The supply line hopefully will fill up with some cars and hopefully business will get better.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned kind of the bell curve we saw with COVID. Obviously, I saw a similar thing in the wholesale car market. I think it was 2008-ish. Mm-hmm. And prior to that, you could fall off a truck and make money wholesaling cars. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, everything changed. The lanes thinned out. And really what was left is were wholesalers who ran lean stores and really knew what they were doing, so that kind of played over at COVID. You know, we saw everybody was making money, and now things are starting to settle.
Well, look, more millionaires are made during bad times than good times, right? And when you have a good time, everybody finds this easy. Buy car, take car part, sell car part, collect money, repeat process, go to the bank. It's a simple thing, and everybody's happy and everybody has fun doing it. When you move into this dynamic where things are more challenging, you know, in the peer group stuff, I've been preaching to them, this is where operators operate. It's time to be an operator, right, of coming back in. Play day's over. Everybody had a good run. We had a nice, you know, thing. Now, this is one of the natures of our industry, right? I mean, this is a very old industry, right? We're here sitting at ARA and looking at the history of that. And when you go up to some of these people that are in their 80s now, and there's still quite a few of them that are out there, and you say, hey, I want to talk to you about the good old days. And they say, Sonny boy, I need a little clarification on what era you're talking about, because I had 3 or 4 pretty good runs in my day.
Yeah.
that's the cool thing about our industry is you prepare and then you have the runs. And right now we're in the preparation time where operators operate. People are getting sharper at what they do. And in other instances, some people hate this business and say that there's no money that can be made. And you know, it's a challenging environment, that's for certain. But at the same time, this is where it gets to be fun.
Yeah. How many peer groups are you running?
I don't know. There's somewhere around between full service and self-service, 12 or 15 or something like that. I'm in a weird dynamic right now where, you know, theoretically speaking, big groups are bigger money. But too big of a group is not good information. Yeah. There's a pace. There's a certain amount of time that needs to be spent. If you're always tapping your watch, got to go. Yeah. It's a problem. So through consolidation, I've lost some groups, I've added some things, and I've come back. So I find myself at a weird position because you have a guy doing $1 million a month, and then you have a guy doing $200,000 a month. They can't be in the same group. They don't speak the same language. Sure. Deal. So you can't have a group with 3, and a group with 10 or 12 doesn't work either. So
what's your ideal?
8 to 9,
gotcha.
You know, in there. That way it's a day and a half pace. Everybody's in there, and there's ample time to
everybody can be heard and hear.
Well, look, in some ways this becomes a broken record. I mean, how many auto recyclers that you know need to sell more auto parts?
Yeah, all of them.
All of them.
Yeah.
Right? How many do you know need to buy more cars?
All of them.
All of them. How many of them need to buy the cars cheaper? All of them. Yeah. So some of the stuff that you're saying you got to do is a broken record of this is what you got to do.
I was thinking about that on the way up. I was kind of thinking of some things I wanted to ask you about, and I thought, is there a pattern? Whether they're doing $1 million a month or they're doing $200,000 a month, is there a pattern where you feel like you're delivering a similar or same message, regardless of the group?
Well, yes, and everybody's on a different path. So one of the things that becomes vital to me is to be able to plug in and give, you know, be able to talk through how you do some of these things. It's easier to say sell more. How do you sell, you know, how do you do that, right? How do you get your people to get more? How do you take more cars apart? How do you buy at a better vantage point? How do you leave more bids? How do you, you know, do that? By putting smart people together, kind of, and you get the best answers of that. To, you know, look, there's been, I've been in the room for a lot of things that have happened in there. Some of the rooms I've snuck into, I had no business being in there, but got in there. And some of the rooms I was the center of attention when you were going back through there. But a long time ago, I got into at a peer group, right? I mean, and I attended these for a lot of years before I, you know, purchased Jim Counts' consulting company. And so one of the points of contention that we had was Jim Counts told me that all you had to do was buy more cars. You just keep buying cars, and you'll keep selling more parts. And that basically said that the law of diminishing returns didn't exist in the auto recycling industry. And if that's true, that makes it the only industry in the entire world where the law of diminishing returns, right? And what does that mean? I mean, like, what's a TV value to you? I mean, I come in right now and I give you a brand spanking new 48-inch flat screen TV.
Yeah, it's a couple $100.
What's that going to do to you? It's like I don't have any place to put that. I got better TVs everywhere I got. Right. The law of diminishing returns, right? And so at that point, it became clear that what we hadn't found yet was the point where it kicked in, which essentially translated into, as an industry, we weren't very good at taking cars apart. The better we got at taking cars apart, the faster we sold the parts. That part Jim was 100% right on. Then all of a sudden, and especially during the pandemic, whenever all you had to do was take it apart, just keep taking it apart, and the parts sold, that we got really, really good and really got the dynamics of how to really run a factory putting out cars. Now, all of a sudden, the sales ability has, for the very first time in the history of industry, dismantling capacity, buying capacity, has caught up with sales ability. And it's created a whole new dynamic, which in some ways I'm pretty proud of myself, right? I mean, we've identified a problem.
Yeah.
We went after it and we found it. Okay, congratulations, big boy. Now you got to fix it.
Now you have a
right?
solution to
You got to come back in and say, well, how do we increase demand? Well, and look, there's a lot of things to it, right? And a lot of things are, conceptually, recycled original equipment, ROE. What is that? Another attempt at rebranding a used auto part in a way that's acceptable, that people start to come back in and understand it. We are more mainstream USA or worldwide now than we have ever been. I mean, a publicly traded company's been in existence for a long time now, a Fortune 500 company that's in there right now. Their overall gist is under attack for a variety of reasons right at the moment, but nonetheless, it's still there, it's still producing, and still a viable after a long period of time. Private equity has found us now. They're coming in, they're finding it an interesting time to come in at a high water mark.
Yeah.
And then, see that in. And then one of the other things that seems to be underestimated is the overall resiliency of an independent-owned auto recycling.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the fastest way I can make anything happen, and I'm living proof of this with the story I just told you.
Yeah.
Tell me what we can't do.
Yeah.
Right? All of a sudden, but we got an answer for you. We will find a way because that's what we do. Operators operate. We find a way to come in. And so we're not letting them just take our lunch money. We're kind of, in there. So with that being said, then how do you elevate the overall market performance of everything that comes in? And so now it's about, the information, getting it out to the right people, getting it in front of the right people, handling it the right way, doing all of those things become pretty key in making things happen.
Let me go back because maybe I missed it, but you were talking about how the dismantling caught up with sales, and that now we've got a different problem, right? Which does that mean purchasing is lagging? And what
look, the history of our industry, right? I mean, long before Copart and IAA were going, in the live auction days, right? We were out of money long before they were out of cars to sell us, right?
Yeah.
So there would be a group of us that would be over there shenanigan, and whatnot, and stuff that we shouldn't have been doing, and flipping quarters, and other people were over socializing, and and other people were waiting till the end of the sale till people ran out of money to it was then. Well, today they're out of cars long before I'm out of money, and then I would really like to sit down with somebody from Copart and IAA and a Webster's Dictionary to discuss what an auction is, right? Because where I grew up, high number was the winner of the auction, and we had some cars that were on call. Today's world is a little bit different in how many cars are no-saled and rerun and, buy it nows later and, things along that line. But
do you think so? When I came up through Mannheim, that was my auction experience. I worked there for about 8 years, and I stood on the block every week and next to the auctioneer and repped cars for the sellers. And the sellers are the ones, they're the ones who are going to tell you if it's an absolute sale. They're the ones who are going to tell you, here's the reserve. They'll tell you if you got some variance, or they'll tell you just call me. And I personally used to try really hard to coach my sellers into steering away from those if bids, and you're building a reputation. People are just going to walk over there to ABC, who's selling their cars, and they know they can buy cars over there. And it works. Sometimes it worked, and some people who usually the sellers are the banks, and they had more people to report to, and this and that. They weren't as agile. They weren't they didn't have the ability to make these decisions to go, okay, yeah, Vince, do it that way. But that's when I saw, that was my first exposure to seeing the damage that the IFBID does to your purchasers.
Well, look, things have changed, right? I mean, a long time ago, nobody trusted anybody. Yeah. So the auction house had to buy the car from the insurance company and then sell the car. Well, it was them. It was their car. They knew what they wanted to do.
Right.
So the win rates were a lot higher, right? Willis Johnson came in and said, hey, look, the cars will sell for more money if you give them on consignment. And they have. Well, now you back in and you have the car jockeys and the people that are just hustling through, moving the cars around in different deals. The export market being what it is, it's become that you have to leave a tremendous amount of bids on everything. Yeah. And when you start looking at it, and especially in today's world where things are getting hot and heated with the technology, right? AI components, and everybody's looking at how do you one of the largest costs of my business is the cost of not buying salvage. Right. I mean, you stop and think about, you got to be pretty old to remember, but there was a baseball player by the name of Mario Mendoza, and they created the Mendoza line. He was such a poor hitter. It was like a 200 batting average, right? And the auto recycling success rate buying cars makes that look like a high performing person, right? Yeah. I mean, we've got a
Hall of Famer.
Right, Hall of Famer. We got a 4 or 5% win rate on salvage and the deal. So you look about the cost of no sale and no sale and no sale. And then, if you get in, when you start looking at some of the shrinkage rates from how many cars are available at the sale to how many cars fit the profile that I'm after to how many cars actually have the parts that I need to the number of cars that I actually have a competitive bid on to the number of cars I actually win on, it's a huge shrinkage rate in the grand scope of things. So, with that being said, that's put intense pressure on people buying. We have sophisticated buying departments. Buying used to be a hobby, but in the large, sophisticated operations, it's a full-blown department with managers and multiple people. And
there's no more shotgun approach. You got to be a sniper.
That's correct. Yeah. And hunting across, multiple platforms and being in how you're doing it has kind of changed those dynamics to doing it. Not to mention the fact that that's in certain instances we got financially healthy during COVID. So my cash position's strong and my inventory depleted so I can buy.
Have you seen people buying farther and farther away over the years?
Look, one of the common pieces of advice that I give is to go one town over, right? Go one more salvage pull out. When you're not buying enough cars, you have no choice. The cost
of not buying the car is greater than the cost of transporting it a little farther.
Look, one of the main things that we stumbled across a long time ago was unit cost overhead, right? It's what's it cost to run a car through the factory. And the more cars you run, the less the cost per car is to run. That takes pressure off of each car to make money by hitting the efficiency number. Now, there's got to be a gross profit produced per car to match the car. I mean, there's moving components in it that comes back in, which some of that is the terminology that's changed, right? If you go through the history of I'm a niche inside a niche inside a niche, right? And so if you go back to the Howard Nussbaum days.
Yeah.
We used to leave
he used to go around and teach sales.
Well, no, he did what I did.
Right.
His peer groups. He found the sales things later, and then he finished with that primarily. But the peer group stuff of teaching us really how to run a business instead of just, look, we had a low COGS number. You could be really inefficient. There was a lot of ways to make money, but everybody saw that it was getting to be more difficult in coming in. But when we'd leave a Howard Nussbaum peer group meeting with a car count number, you need to buy 20 cars a month. You need to buy 10 cars a month. You need to buy 100 cars in there. And that was how it worked. Well, then when Jim Counts came in, Jim Counts rightfully brought up the fact that, the car count's important, right? The unit cost overhead's a number. We didn't understand it quite as well as we do now, but we kind of were on that path. But he wanted to know, how many sales did you buy? It didn't matter how many cars you bought. How much sales did you buy? Right? Because you need to buy $100,000 in sales. Okay? Well, if it takes...
Each car represents
a sales number, right? And it comes back in. Well, theoretically...
I'm sorry. Is that a general number, or is it specific?
No, it's hard specific. This is how bidding... This is how the buying works.
So your sales number on a 2023 Silverado is different than your sales number.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Which is my cost number is different as well, right?
Gotcha.
So this is some of the things that when you're using a buying software, even in a shoot from the hip intuitive buyer looks at. It says the engine's going to sell for, the training's going to sell for, the body's that's going to sell for $6,500. I need to pay $3,250 for it, and that's the algorithms that they use and come back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we're going through in accounts meetings and we're trying to buy that, and then you're looking at what the unit cost overhead is and coming back. Then me personally, I found myself in an environment where we were very old. We were in a Jim Counts group that was referred to as the elephants because there were two big groups. One was the elephants and one was the lions. The elephants were old, deeply rooted, hard to knock over, if not impossible to knock over, but really slow to turn.
Yeah.
And the lions were young and aggressive and growing. Like Snyder's was in the lions.
And when was this? Were you with, was it
I was
American?
an American.
American.
I was an American, in there. And we were just, like I said, we were just figuring things out where, look, this is the confluence of everything coming together because it was figuring out unit cost overhead, figuring out adjusted unit cost overhead, which is where you kind of lead to where we're sitting in these accounts meetings and we're talking about what you need to buy. Well, I'm consistently coming up short because we were an elephant. We were well-financed. We were deal. One of the things we didn't do was borrow money. Well, that meant that you're paying for your growth out of your pocket. Now, that's good, but slow, right? So we're constantly short of the sales number that we needed to really accomplish. We're out of money, right? So we came up and said, well, if I got really serious about brokering parts, right, and instead of, back then, we would take a phone call, the customer asked for a part, would say, I don't have one, give me your name and number. If I felt like it,
right,
I looked around for it. Me personally, whenever I was selling, what I found is when I did feel like it, by the time I called them back, most of the time they'd already found it, bought it.
Yeah.
So
probably from the same guy you found it from.
Probably.
Yeah.
So I just started selling the part. Just make up the price and sell it, right? And everybody said you can't do that. And every now and again, I used to have to call back and say, geez, sorry, ours was bad.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. In there. But
you won more than you lost.
I won more than I lost.
Yeah.
So then, things, like I said, things started to come together. I went from being a salesman at American, some things, it was just a confluence of everything going together. The Rubin family that owned American, LKQ had looked at them and just slapped them in the face by saying, you're not profitable enough for us to make an offer.
About what year was this?
This would have been 94.
Okay.
Okay. And at the same time, I'd gone through a really interesting period of time. Traction issues would probably be the best way
to
rephrase that. I was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
I've never met that Mike.
so
no, I didn't mean it that way.
I understand.
No, you're fun.
I understand.
But I think I know what you were inferring.
I was a lot of fun. And look, part of that was how I got to the salvage industry.
Cue
right?
the sirens.
Cue the sirens, right? But that was part of how I got there. So, but things had blown up in the family business, right? I mean, we were the self-fulfilling prophecy of the more they griped about me being fun, the more fun I became.
Yeah.
The better I executed, the better it just became this whole bad dynamic until it finally all imploded.
As it does.
Into the deal till one day my stepmother basically told me I was no longer welcome in the family business. And so now I'm homeless, jobless, I have no money, and I've got some habits I've got that are fun. And so I went to school at Northwood. There was a guy there by the name of John Castle that just meant the world to me. And at that point in time, he had moved to Texas and deal, so I called him. And he was originally from Scotland, so he had that cool Scottish Sean Connery accent deal. Yeah. And I told him where we're at, and he said, Kunkel, me boy, If you lay off the booze, the broads, and the drugs, the wrecking yard business, I think, would be good for you. So I went to work for Auto Info and kind of started the pursuit. And he was wrong. I didn't need to lay off the booze, the broads, or the drugs. The wrecking yard business, I fit right in back then. It was fun. It was fun. Right?
I did not see that coming.
So at any rate, you get married, you get divorced, you get through all of the whole thing. And one day I show up at work at American, and at this point in time, it's tired of floundering, right? Mm-hmm. So I wasn't looking for a job. I was looking for a home, right? And I sat down, and I had two options. I could go to work for Ron Sturgeon. Mm-hmm. He had offered me $1,000 a week for 90 days, then straight on the commission deal after that. And he said, you know the drill, Kunkel. You'll make really good money. It'll be just like old times. And he hung up the phone. My other offer was from Barry Rubin at $7 an hour for 40 hours a week. No overtime, no nothing. I don't really have a spot for you. We'll figure it out. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking $280, $1,000 a week. But something Ron said just kept stuck in my back of mind of just like old times. Mm. And I thought, I didn't really like old times. It wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. So I made the decision to go to work at American.
Yeah.
Okay? So, my dad ended up passing away. There was a trust fund. There was money coming in. Then the money quit coming in. And then all of a sudden I need to make more money. Mm-hmm. At the same time, LKQ is out looking at things. They look at the Rubin deal and they say, you don't make enough money for us to make an offer. They go over and buy another yard in Dallas, LKQ North Texas now.
Okay.
Sturgeon comes over and he slaps the Rubins in the other cheek by saying, oh, I paid more in taxes than you made last year. So now they're double-tailed between their legs of the deal, and I need to make more money. So when I show up on the doorstep on the heels of all of this, instead of being Joe Idiot employee that says, hey, you need to pay me more money, mm-hmm. I came in with a plan and says, hey, I need to make some more money. And the only way that's going to happen is if we sell some more parts. So we started off in doing. At the same time, LKQ, like I said, it's forming together. And then Howard kind of sort of threw in with LKQ on stuff, which instantly turned the independent auto recycler against Howard, which then in turn opened the door for Jim Counts to slide in and start his,
I see.
How the ball just kind of passed. Mm-hmm. Well, American had hosted the last Howard Nussbaum profit team meeting. And
is that what it was called?
No.
Okay.
But whatever.
Yeah.
Peer group
Peer
meeting.
Group, yeah.
In there. Shameless plug. How about that?
Be my guest.
There you go. But we're sitting there at dinner, right? And now I've muscled my way to taking over American, right? I said we needed to try a couple things work. Barry said just take over handling it. Yep. So we're sitting there at dinner and we're talking about the formation of LKQ. We're talking about these rumors about Ford maybe doing something that ultimately became Greenleaf. And Howard made the comment of strength in numbers. Still, there's a strength in numbers.
Sure.
So, boom, off he goes. Well, that kind of resonated. And then Barry, the owner of American, he calls a meeting with just, it was primarily made up of, back then we had the 4 states, which was the Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana state associations. Were pretty tight together. We had a conference every year. It rotated between Arkansas and Texas, and
was there a lot of operators in those other states? I see Texas.
Well,
I go
not
to
so
Texas.
much Louisiana, but yeah. Arkansas we did well, and Oklahoma traveled pretty well down for the deals. And those were just a lot of fun events. But so we called together a lot of people that we primarily knew from there. Mm-hmm. And then you hearken back to my upbringing, which I grew up in a new auto parts business, right? My dad had a large independent auto parts store and unaffiliated with anybody. And somewhere in 1986 or 87, right? I mean, you're talking about right when, like I said, a very dynamic time because I'm working for my dad and we're doing a lot of stuff. I'm still having way too much fun for the circumstances, but the consolidation of private equity and whatnot hit the new auto parts business, and profit margins were being driven down to unbelievable. I mean, we couldn't really make any money. So my dad said, boy, there's strength in numbers, right? So he put together a team and the thing. So I just hearkened back to what my dad did with this little group in western Pennsylvania that ended up forming a warehouse in the new auto parts side together. We have this meeting in Texas, and we're sitting in the room, and there's a bunch of guys in there, and we're talking about how LKQ, and boy, if Ford shows up and the whole thing, and Sturgeon's already said he's going for the Ford money like there's no tomorrow, and, this is, what are we going to do here, guys? And I said, I got an idea. And I explained the idea, and everybody looked at me like a calf looking at a new gate saying, and I don't know, and one guy, you happen to know this guy, but one guy, his name's Carter Frank from Houston, Texas, and he stood up. He's almost 80 years old now. In there, his grandfather's yard.
Wait, is he
the fishing guy?
Oh yeah, he's the one with the
fishing
boat.
Guy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
I'm thinking I know that name.
know that name, the fishing guy.
Yes, sir.
So, but Carter Frank's grandfather started Carter Frank, Johnny Frank's Auto Salvage in downtown Houston in 1913. So Carter's very well respected, very in the deal, and he stands up in front of this group of people and he says, look, I know we don't know this boy.
Talking about you.
He says, but there's something about him I believe. And somehow or another, Carter had the credibility with that group.
How'd that make you feel?
Well, game was on.
How old are you?
Oh, I was 31 years old. So
Yeah,
at this point in time, I'd already been through the fun stage. I'd already been through, this was serious now.
That was a pretty significant endorsement.
Yeah, but at the same token, I had, there's an old Benny Cunningham asked me a question one time of the deal. He says, is why can't the blind man see?
Why?
They have no vision. I had vision. I had the thing and deal. And when Ford came in, right, I knew when Ford bought Sturgeon's deal, that was my biggest competitor, right? We weren't worried about LKQ. We figured they wouldn't make it.
Yeah.
Ford, on the other hand, we were serious. God kind of showed how smart we were. We got it backwards in the grand scope of things, right? But my contention was when they bought Sturgeon's operation, that was my biggest competitor. So the one thing that I could not have happen is Ford to be able to pay attention to the Dallas-Fort Worth market and pound on me. So my concept was really simple. If I came at them like a spider monkey and I hit them from every different angle I could hit them from, they wouldn't know what to do with me in doing it. So we start going into the counts meetings, and we had met Highway in Brownwood, right? James Jr. and me and Barry, the pretty three thick as thieves in the grand scope of things, right? But when we met, we started defining the way to trade the parts, pre-selling the part, fixing the problems on the back end, free-flowing it, running a trailer back and forth. And we'd go into our counts meetings, and we were having big sales increases. And we kept telling people what we were doing. And Jim Counts would say, hey, don't listen to them. I'm telling you, you're selling all the parts you could sell.
What was his concern?
Well, he said we're already selling the parts. On the paper, you could show that we were selling all the parts off the cars already.
Okay.
So what his contention was, we were just selling them cheaper. And that wasn't my contention. We're selling them maybe cheaper, but we're selling them faster. Faster is turns.
Right.
So then we come in.
You take that money and buy
more cars. Right? And then we came back the second time, and we did the same thing again. And then Lee Werman was in the peer group with us.
Yep.
And Jim Counts was saying the same thing. Don't listen to him. Don't listen to him. And Lee comes up and says, hey, I want to listen to you. I'm only 6 hours. And at dinner that night, we mapped out, and he came in. Right? Then we brought in the Snyders, and all of a sudden, trailer system.
Got them arms flying.
That trailer system starts rocking.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then we go back in to the meeting. There's 3 of us that have big sales increases, and Jim Count starts again, and then Ed Lacey from Lacey's in Virginia, as Jim's saying, don't listen to the boy. Ed says, Jim, I think the group would like for you to sit down, shut up, let the boy talk. And then we explained, and the whole PRP concept then became.
That had to cause a little bit of a rift, right, between you and.
Most of the time, Jim denies all those stories as being true to this point. So that's what doesn't
But
matter.
you ended up buying the business.
No, I never had anything to do with it.
Oh, I thought you
no.
said. I misunderstood
Nope.
you at some point. I thought you said you. So okay.
Nope, I'm a hired gun at this point in time.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I work for American, I work for Barry,
right.
and all I need to do is make more money. That was the whole guise. But once we started and the PRP path got created, it was kind of, in there. And then from there, like I said, a lot of it was timing. Caliper Collision was being formed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they came into Fort Worth and they bought 2 body shops that happened to be owned by a guy by the name of Joe Sanders. His son, Mark Sanders, is the president of Caliper Collision.
Mm-hmm.
So they came in and bought them. Well, Mark was a young guy. We were young guys. I mean, we're all just learning and the deal. And it came to the conclusion that I only thought I knew how to run a body shop, right? I mean, when the truth came out of it, even with my background, everything I thought I knew was all wrong. So we sat down with them and we learned how Caliper did business. And then we superimposed how we did business on top of that, which then in turn opened up the door. At the same time, I knew the insurance company was the way to go. LKQ was doing something very, very similar at the time in fishing. We were all just learning. And so everybody wants State Farm. Well, I knew that we were going to make a ton of mistakes. So you don't go after Big Daddy and make all the mistakes on Big Daddy. So
they have a long memory, too.
A long memory.
You screw up an insurance contract, see it for 10, 15 years.
Not even on the insurance contract side. Just don't perform well in general and watch how it goes in market recommendations. So then I met a guy that worked for Progressive. They were a young company. They were aggressive.
What year is this? I'm sorry. Keep asking because I worked for them.
Yep, you worked for them, and it's around that same time frame. But we'd be talking about 96, 97.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Was he in claims or was he branch level?
It was, the guy's name was Tim Allen.
Okay.
And he was a regional manager.
Gotcha.
Right. And he made a comment to me. We were sitting down and I said, I'm just talking to people at this point. I mean, look, I'm not that smart. I just talk, right? And out of talking to people, I learn different things, and I'm pretty good at piecing them together and figuring stuff out. So I'm just talking to insurance companies. And this Tim Allen tells me, I don't care about quality of part. I'll jam it down their throat. I said, you're my guy. You're my guy. Because I do care about quality of part.
Right.
And I don't want to jam it down their throat, but I need somebody who's willing to work with me while I learn what's acceptable. And then from there, we created something called trailer training. Okay? So everybody wants the insurance company to come to them. It's not exactly reasonable. So I went to them and said, hey, look, when you do your meetings, how about let's do some used auto part training? So I'd show up with a truck and a trailer. On that trailer, I'd have a quarter cut. I'd have a front end assembly. I'd have knees. I'd have a car. Right, in pieces, and we'd go out and we'd, in, and then we kind of use that model to create the PRP templates around the country of how you get in with the insurance companies, how you go to a trade show, how you really start to come in, and then from there we got the expansion going.
How closely were you keeping an eye on Ford Greenleaf?
Well,
and my real question is, could you look back and pinpoint what went wrong?
Well, look,
because they had all the money.
They had all the money. What they had is, look, when we were kids riding the school bus, and they start the message at the front of the bus and the message at the back. They could never figure that out. Right. So the message got diluted on its way down. Then it certainly seemed like in Ford's case, because of the unionization and general structure of their company, they mid-level managered things to death. Every 8 people, you got to have another manager. Well, that's not the way wrecking yards operate, and I think that's probably what hurt them more so than anything.
I saw a couple of things. I saw the same thing happen twice at 2 different companies. And the first time was when I was at Progressive, and then a buddy of mine from church became the general manager of the local Mannheim yard right around the time that Mannheim launches TRA, the Total Resource Auction, their salvage division. My buddy comes to me, pulls me out of Progressive, hires me to run that TRA sale. I had a very good working understanding of how insurance handles salvage, what they expect of the salvage pools. And I walked in, and I was 60, 90 days in, and I thought, no, you can't. These guys aren't getting it. Of course, now I'm working for a corporation, and they think, if Avis calls you up and says, hey, I need 35 cars moved from Baltimore to Fredericksburg, and you get that done in 10 days, they're fine. They only missed one sale, maybe two, they're fine. But if Brethren Mutual Insurance calls you and says, I got one car sitting in a body shop in Lynchburg, I need it moved, and it takes you more than 24 hours to move it, you're paying storage. And they couldn't figure that out, right? And ultimately, they floundered with trying to secure and keep insurance contracts. Mm-hmm. Now you fast forward, I went to work for another auction company who predominantly sells salvage, still does, and they wanted to create a whole car side. And I watched them do the same thing. They were trying to plug this completely different thing into their machine, and with being very rigid about trying to change any component of their machine. And it was the same thing. And I wonder, that's why I asked the question about Ford, they just come into it with this certain mindset about how things are done, and they don't allow themselves to learn that this whole new thing that they've stepped into doesn't work quite like that.
Yep. And they also had an extreme change at the top of the leadership, right? I mean, the president of Ford was like Nasser or something at the time, and he left, and William Ford came back in. That was Nasser's baby, which automatically made it William Ford's nemesis, and so they wanted to kick that to the curb and be done as a failed experiment would be the best. At the same time, I still think that when with LKQ and Greenleaf both coming in, and I still think the same is happening today with the private equity groups coming in, but they don't come in buying crummy yards, right? I mean, they're looking for good, well-run yards that are profitable. Then all of those guys have made a mistake along the way and have found that it costs a lot more money to turn one around than it costs to buy a good one.
Do you think those, for that reason, and I'm sure you've certainly probably been asked this question before, but do you think those private equity companies are paying attention to who's in your peer groups?
Well, I don't know that they pay attention, but my peer group people fit their profile very well. They're open to change. They're apt to being pushed at. Their numbers are very clean. They're
being held accountable,
the numbers. Right? And when you start talking about the cost of due diligence, these guys are out a lot of money to come up with a thing, and a guy thinks his business is worth $50 million, and they're giving him a $2 million offer. Yeah. It's not going to work, and that becomes problematic. So I don't know that I'm being targeted per se as much as that's, as they watch that, which is kind of where I was going with that, because every time that when LKQ bought the best of the best, Greenleaf came in, Ford came in, bought the best of the best, right? The private equity groups come in and they pick off what is perceived as the best of the best. When all of those instances, the vacuum that's been created has been a new group of up-and-comers to backfill into those positions. And each time when you go back to the original LKQ to the private equity, those yards were nothing yards when LKQ was being bought, and those guys have risen up and did what they did.
Those yards that you talk about that fill that vacuum, are they are those yards that have just been around forever?
I don't know about that.
Or are they new? I mean, because see a lot? We don't see a lot of new startups.
If you really want to be honest about it, there's not a lot of guys that say, "Hey, I got $6-8 million in cash laying around. I got nothing better to do with. Let's go open up a wrecking yard." But what's it take to open up a wrecking yard? It's very capital intensive. Yeah. Okay. Now, even if you get past a capital intensive deal, it's a junkyard. When's a junkyard make television? Tire fire? Yeah. Body disposal. Yeah. Right? Nobody talks about the positive economic impact, how many millions of dollars we pump into the community.
We've got to change that.
For, the stuff that we go in. So when you start coming back in about how few places are actually, you could go to greenfield a facility is getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
I meet somebody maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, but once a year I'll meet somebody who's trying to greenfield, and they got stars in their eyes, and you just want to put your arm around. And I'm not the kind of guy that's going to squash somebody's dream. I'd rather say, all right, well, pull up your
right.
your boots because but you can do it.
You can do it. You can absolutely do it and come back in. But yes, you have some younger businesses that are out there, and you have some multi-generational businesses too. But at the same token, historically speaking, not just the auto recycling industry is probably better at it than a lot of other industries. But
why do you think that is?
Well, I think that the work ethic doesn't dilute quite as far, right? But in a lot of industries, that third generation in, the silver spoon's got a gold-plated spoon.
Yeah.
So they're not getting dirty. They're not in there. Whereas the first generation, I mean, when a business starts, it's a dictatorship. I mean, this is the hill I'm going to die on. I got all my eggs on this. This is what I'm doing. As a business matures, it becomes more of a democracy of convincing everybody this is the right way to do it. This is what we need, to come back along. So some people are good at that. Some people aren't good at that. Mm-hmm. Some people are, they've been groomed their whole life for it, hate it. And some people have been groomed their whole life for it, and they're really into it and willing to advance the multi-generational component of it.
How much of what you do with your groups is about management style versus operations?
Oh, I don't know. It's
do you primarily focus on numbers and
look, it's
because you brought up a good point, right? You could
look if
everybody hates you,
then
it sucks coming to work.
Well, look, you go back to there's a legendary baseball coach by the name of Connie Mack. He was a head coach of the Philadelphia A's in the early 1900s. It was up until the last decade or two was the worst baseball team in the history of mankind. The first team to ever lose 100 games, in there, right? But Connie Mack knew they were bad. And so he came up and said they needed a rallying cry, right? Something to band together to have any hope of doing it. So the rallying cry that he came up with was they're going to hate him. And so they hated him. It was terrible. They lost 100 games. It was a complete and epic disaster. But the business point of it was a rallying cry, right? Something to get back together. The other point of it is that it can't be all negative coming from the boss. So at some point in time, you become a broken record of you need to sell more, you need to sell more, you need to sell more. So a lot of the things come into that goes without saying. The how-to, comes in. So you spend time digging into it and coming back in. A lot of the site visit stuff gets generated out of that, is you need to come see exactly what we're doing, exactly how we're going to, or go back there and just ride cattle on the team to make it happen, right? I mean, one of the biggest problems I personally have is I see a tremendous amount of potential in everybody I come across. So I know what you're capable of, but what are you willing to give me of that capacity is the question. And most people aren't willing to give what they're capable of, which then becomes the problem for coming back in. So how do you fight your way through that?
Have you ever had a
all the time
fire business?
All the time.
Yeah.
Well, not all the time, but yes, we have some. And
but
look,
I imagine
usually,
there's a prescribed
usually,
if you're not there's how many times can you tell somebody this is what you need to do and they keep ignoring it?
Look,
I'm not doing you any good.
I had a peer group meeting one time that we were about to do a yard, and 8 people, not 8 yards, but 8 people, got up, walked out of the room. Went to the bar. Boy, you talk about, I was fuming. So
you were getting ready to start.
And 8 people walked out. So we did the review. Took a break. And I went straight to the bar because one of those guys was really close to me. And man, we were fixing to go. And when I got to the bar, he said, well, let me guess what he said. Well, we was fixing to, we was going to, we didn't quite do it. He repeated the last hour that I just went through.
When he wasn't even in the room.
Wasn't even in the room. So I turned back around and I went back and I got rid of that guy and said, look, you're not making improvements. You're not working on anything. You're just wanting to be part of the country club, not part of the deal. And now since then, that guy has come back. He's, seen the errors of his ways.
But you got to show progression.
But you have to show progression. And that's not just me, but when the group starts to walk out, it's their time as well that comes in. And then I've had a deal of, look, there's no doubt of I had a self-service meeting during Winter Armageddon, and there were a number of people that got landlocked and couldn't get to Arizona for the meeting just 2 weeks ago. Just two weeks ago. So, at any rate, one of the guys is taking the call on his phone, right? So he's got his guy made it, but the owner of the company didn't get out of Florida. Okay. So he's in Florida and he's driving around and he's got his wife and a friend of hers are listening on. Now I know the wife. We've vacationed together. I mean, we're family friends. Of this, but that's a different deal. This isn't about friends. This is business. We're into the and then a week or two later, the guy has me on the phone and he said, my wife and her friend were quite appalled at how mean you are and the things that you say, and you actually put up with that from him. And he said, and I had to point them out that this is the real world and what he's saying isn't wrong. So I am an acquired taste, right? I mean, these guys are very successful. They've done very, very well. And I'm sitting there telling them everything that's ugly.
Nobody's
about
there.
What they're
Nobody's
doing.
Showing up to be coddled.
No. And so it's trying to make it humorous enough, right? And everybody's laughing. We're trying to have a good time. We try to eat well. We're trying to go, and do things to make it in its totality. But the truth of the matter is we're not there to celebrate winning.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I grew up, my dad was a very accomplished race car driver. Okay. Not to some extent of some people in the salvage industry, but he had a very nice career. And so,
is that where you first got your love of?
I'm a car guy from the very, very beginning. I started with Matchbox cars, moved to models, then to race cars, then to auto parts itself, and never really did anything but that. So, but as a race car driver, we celebrate winning on the front straightaway, right? Once it's over, it's back to work, right? Because there's
Next
another race. There's another, deal. I mean, as we said, and we didn't show up to run second. We came there to win. Take the trophy, take the money, and eyeball the trophy girl, see how pretty she is, see if she gets to come along or not. Right? That's the whole goal when you set out. So I don't understand celebrating winning. So from that standpoint, it's a balancing act, right? So we're not there to celebrate the wins. We want to pat you on the back and say you did good, but the end, because it's about making more money.
Yeah.
That's the whole general thing. Because the one thing in my business that never gets tired, never calls off sick, never gets interrupted, ever, is operational expense. It just keeps working its way up the food chain. And the moment I get into that proverbial sweet spot where everything's good and I get comfortable, that expense line sneaks up, and sooner or later it's nipping at me and coming back in. So,
did you ever drive?
Every time I showed an interest in it, my dad would beat it out of me quickly.
No kidding.
He absolutely.
Did he love it?
Oh, absolutely.
But he didn't want it for you.
No. What he said
was it a money suck?
It was a black hole of money. Okay? And he said, what I really need you to do is get your fat butt up on the counter and pay for it all. Right? Just keep paying for it all. Yeah. So from that standpoint, I'm a huge racing fan. I attend a ton of races.
You like dirt track, right?
Dirt track.
Yeah. Was that what your dad ran?
My dad's had 131 career wins, 130 on dirt and 1 on asphalt.
Wow.
So we didn't do a whole lot of asphalt.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So
I've never been to a dirt track race. I think I would like it because I'm a car guy. I mean, I've always loved cars. So, and I find it interesting, and I discovered this when I was in the auction world. I found it interesting how few people in the automotive industry are car people. Like a lot of them were like, no, I took a job at the auction during college and never left, and I got an economics degree. I'm like, okay, I like cars.
Look, you gotta say, my mother uttered a classic statement that I'll carry with me forever. But when I first got run out of the family business, my folks are divorced. My mother and stepmother were friends that you get where my going there didn't go good, and whatnot. So
What do you mean? Were they tight?
Oh yeah, best
Okay.
of friends.
Oh,
Best
geez.
of friends. Well, she was the race car wife's owner. My dad was the driver, and we went down that path,
Yeah.
which is not unusual in that world. But at any rate, my mother was thrilled I was out of the family business. And when I went to work for Auto Info, all right, that's a computer company. The fact that I'm installing computer systems in auto recyclers
Yeah.
is an irrelevant fact. It's my son's in the computer industry. Okay, so
That's respectable.
right? So I did that, and then Auto Info was switching over from the classic system to Checkmate. Okay, and rather than retrain the installers, they just fired all of us, and we're going to retrain new people to do it. It went from a 3-week install to a 5-day install.
Mm-hmm.
So at any rate, as a 23-year-old, I thought that Vegas would be a good place to settle down. I told you I was a lot of fun, right? So Vegas,
That's a terrible idea.
as a 23-year-old fun guy in there. So I call my mother, and I tell my mother that I'm leaving the computer company, and I took a job as a general manager of a small foreign car wrecking yard in Henderson, Nevada, just outside of Vegas. And my mother utters a line that will live in infamy of, 4 years of college for this? You haven't even been to prison. It's like, okay, here we go.
That hit
right?
hard.
Here we go, right? So, you go through and then you start to see, what it is of the modernization of the auto recycler
Right.
from the junkyard that she saw. And look, my dad was a race car guy, so he's carted my mother to wrecking yards
Sure.
in there, but they were the early self-serve type.
Yeah. Are your mom and dad still around?
No.
Were they alive long enough to see you kind of rise
No,
to the
my dad. Look, I went through a period of time that I arrived at American, right, where I had a small wrecking yard, did 240, 260, 280Z cars. 300s existed, but I couldn't afford them.
Wow.
Okay,
What a niche.
what a niche, just really tight.
Yeah,
Look, I
yeah.
could still tell you air start valve on a 280Z, and I could still diagnose a lot
Those
of
are
that
cool
stuff.
cars.
Cool, fun cars.
I've had a couple of them.
But but I had the yard. I'm married. The yard's paying the bills, but really not making any money. My marriage had turned into the classic country and western song of "You aren't much fun once I quit drinking." In there, because like I said, I'm starting to get my, pieces come in, and my dad calls me one day and he says, "Look, my back's been giving me some problems. Long story short, I got liver cancer. They're giving me 3 weeks to live." So that was in April of '94. In August of '94, my dad turned 53 years old. So
Wow.
I went back for his birthday, and more or less to say, at this point in time, his 3 weeks had come and gone.
Yeah.
In there. So he held the record for diagnosis and
Right.
longevity and whatnot. But at any rate, he had a 100-acre farm north of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 3 o'clock in the morning, I had my epiphany moment, and when I landed back in Texas the next day, I told my wife I was done. I'll have you divorce papers by the end of the week. I went to my business partner at the yard and said, the guy who did all the guy that you could trust to get paid for crushing cars was Jason Howe from All Imports' grandfather, James Pack.
Oh, cool.
So I said I'd talk to James, and he can be here tomorrow to crush the yard. In there, that covers all the bills, or you could have the keys and I'll walk. And I left there and called American and
Yeah.
the Sturgeon deal, and then
Yeah.
kind of made my thing and started off in there. And then from
What happened to the family farm?
eventually it got sold. Like I said, my dad died in '95. My stepmother lost the businesses a couple of years later.
Was your
and-
stepmother who raised you? Your
Well,
mom, or was there your
we were-
mom?
It was a tight knit. Like I said,
Yeah.
we raced.
Yeah.
So as a family entity, right? I mean, like we're still my stepmother's still around. I still talk to her all the time. We're
But
still.
was she the one who said 4 years of college? And
no, that was my mother.
That was your mother.
That. My
Okay.
stepmother's the one that said I wasn't welcome at the family business. That's her,
Yeah.
deal. And so in that sense, shoot, she doesn't throw me out. I don't end up in the wrecking yard business. So,
Do you have siblings?
I have a lot of them, right?
No kidding.
But we were, like I said, we were a tight knit group. So the easiest way to keep track of us is when I was a senior in high school.
Yeah.
My stepsister was a junior. My stepbrother was a sophomore. My other stepbrother was a freshman. My sister was in the 8th grade.
Wait, were these all Kunkels?
Okay. Step siblings,
Okay.
right? But like I said, we raced together. So
Yeah,
from the time we were,
I was just thinking from
10
a
years old.
classmate perspective, you couldn't turn a corner without bumping into
without
one.
and I was a lot of fun back then too, and they weren't. So yes, there was all kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Look, my whole life I've been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And my whole life I've had a lot of opinions about my working and my fun mixtures.
Yeah,
in
that's
there,
great. And so, at what point did you? How many years did you spend as a recycler, and then when did you flip the switch and become a consultant?
Well, look, when I went to work at American, at that point in time, I had been through Auto Info in there. I had been through the Vegas, where that guy just quit paying his bills, right? So I'd already gone through the process of a divorce, the liquidation, the nastiness of all of that. I went through a yard in Texas he was a lot of fun too, right?
Yeah.
And that was one of the downfalls is we were having too much fun. I had gone through the Sturgeon deal at AAA Small Car World, and then I had gone to work running a wrecking yard for one of the pioneers in the buy here, pay here car lot business in there. I disposed of all of his repos and whatnot. So at that point in time, we're talking probably a 8-year period of time where I just kind of churned through stuff like there was no
I thought it would have been
tomorrow.
longer than that.
No, most of my stuff was quick. I mean, I just, like I said, life was living fast.
And what clicked for you and you thought, instead of running the business, I'm going to teach other people how to run the business?
When I got to work at American, things started to take shape there. And then, like I said, traction started to set in. So I had that was when one of the best investments I ever made in my life was I bought a mirror.
A mirror?
A mirror, okay? And that mirror is the meanest mirror in the deal. And it said things to me that were not kind. And and they were things that were probably all had been said, but for the first time it was me saying them. And so when I got to work at American, I was tired of churning. I wasn't looking for a job anymore. I was looking for a home. I was looking for a place to put down some roots. I had a friend. He thought that the Rubin family was a good family in there. So that's when I, in. So when I got there, I'm looking at it, and a couple of things became apparent to me. The first thing was that my vision of how to run a wrecking yard required cash, the kind of cash that I was never going to have. Okay? So the first thing that became what you're looking for in a manager is a person who has every skill required to own the business, but has come to the realization that they can't.
Yeah.
Okay? When I cross that bridge, okay, now I'm in a manager deal. Okay? Now I've been exposed to Howard Nussbaum, and Howard is a really sharp guy.
Yeah.
Right? But he's like a New York University English lit professor by classic trade. Right? Jim Counts, right? He's the GOAT. He's the greatest of all time in the consulting side. He's done more for our industry than you can shake a stick at for coming back in. He's a Sears and Roebuck guy, and his wrecking yard was a joke, right? Most of what Jim learned, he learned from being a consultant and kind of coming back in. So I'm working at American, and I'm thinking, I think I can do better than both of them guys, right? So I'm also looking at American, and I'm thinking that, Barry, the owner of American, he's like 3 years older than me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
There's no way, even with the sweetheart of sweetheart deals, there's not enough age gap
Right.
for me to buy this. So I laid forth the pattern then, and I had from Barry, when I took over the deal, I said, there's two things that are going to happen here. I'm either going to die here, or I'm going the consultant route. And so when the PRP stuff started, and I started laying the groundwork, and I started doing all of that, then the Greenleaf thing phased out finally, right? Snitzer had it. Snitzer sold it to LKQ. And they gave Bill Stevens, who was running Schnitzer's Greenleaf division, an office with no phone or no computer. So his days were numbered. So he jumped in with the with the Jim Counts side on that. And at the same time, at PRP, we had made the commitment that we needed our people to get smarter running their businesses, so we were going to force them into the peer group concept. So we kind of threw all of those things in and aligned it with that moving forward from there. And then when that started, Bill didn't really want to go to work for Jim. He wanted to own his own company. So the only way he would come with Jim is if a buy-sell agreement on the company came in, and so they had an agreement that had Jim retiring at the age of 70. Well, the company had grown a lot. I said we'd pushed all that PRP stuff to it and all that, and it became more than one person could handle. And so Bill called me one day and asked if I'd partner in with him, and then he got poached by Phoenix. And then
do you think you would have ended up in this if you hadn't got that call?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Look, in the end, Barry sold American.
Yeah.
So in there, but no, I guess I can answer that. Yes, I would have.
Yeah.
Because look, there was at the end of my career at American, I walked into Barry's office and I said, "This is what I want to do." And for the first time ever, Barry said, "That sounds like too much work, and I got enough money." Okay? And I didn't. So for the first time in 20 years, we were disconnected. And that was the day that I knew that Barry wanted me to go into maintenance mode. He wanted to hold steady with what we had, not grow. And I'm a builder by nature.
You still had too much in the tank.
I'm a builder by nature.
Yeah.
I'm not. Look, I don't, you back into my dad thing of that. The racing deal was a no-no. Complacency was also a no-no, right? I mean, I don't have, like I said, I don't understand celebrating winning. It's on to the next,
right.
next opportunity, next time to do it again. So that's when it became kind of apparent that Barry was content and I really wasn't. Junior was getting pretty content with where he was at. So something had to happen.
I've heard you say that you're unemployable.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No one can hire me.
When did that happen?
Oh, probably a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, when I was in college.
Because it sounds like you were a fantastic employee at one time.
Well, no. When I left American, there were a number of people, like when it was formally being announced, that called and asked who I sold to. Right, so there was no, deal. Barry doesn't like the spotlight. Right, he stayed in the background and whatnot. So for all practical purposes, everybody thought I was lying whenever I said I didn't own the company because I could do whatever I wanted. I did whatever I said happened. I got every privilege that the owner got,
right,
without having to own it because of the relationship with Barry. So. So from that standpoint, that part was good. The thing that made it really work was while Barry owned the company, he worked for me. There was no, in there. He ran the inventory department. That was under I'm the GM. You work for me and deal. So we had the innate ability to separate when I was unique. Yelling at him compared to him yelling at me, right? So I said, between me, Barry, and Junior, if we weren't so tight, because there was a lot of times where, Junior had to mediate different things between us where things are being derailed because we're of that. But as far as the employability deal, when I was in college, I was told that, look, there's different personality types that require to have a business, right? Mm-hmm. And there's one called a maverick, right? And I have this on my phone. It's kind of a detailed thing, right? But a maverick, they say, make bureaucrats nervous because we operate under a simple philosophy of if it's not broken, let's break it and see what happens.
I like it.
Right? And in there. So from some of that stuff of being the contrarian, always being, challenged. I don't like rules, right? I mean, everybody says you can't. I don't like the color inside the lines. I push the envelope. I, have done all of that stuff, and I'm extremely outspoken for doing it. So there was time, like I spent zero time in my life thinking about the military because I'm not taking orders from somebody who's dumber than me.
Yeah.
Right. So not that takes much, but to be smarter than me. But still, that's a problem for me for doing it. The corporate world, I knew it wasn't. Through the, I worked for a summer internship for a computer company called Triad that was the new auto parts computer system, like the PowerLink or Pinnacle is, Checkmate is, right, in the recycling side. In there, and then my auto info time when I would be sent back to New York. I mean, we talked on the phone. They want everybody wearing shirts and ties, and I wear a tie as a headband. That's the primary of the, the stuff. So those things just kind of said I was just more suited for the entrepreneurial side of things.
What do you see as some opportunities on the horizon for the industry?
Well, look. What we're going through right now is different, right? There's a lot of things that are going on. The electronic proliferation of the inventory. It's not the salesperson as much as getting the data in front of the right people, properly being displayed and coming back through. So I think that the AI and some of the things that are coming in become very interesting at that. The body shops are incorporating the AI at a pretty significant rate. It's a question of how do we incorporate ourselves into their AI? How does that really work? How do I make sure I protect my market share, for that? In there, I think that there are a lot of facilities that the work required is going to be high. I think that a lot of those same facilities, their land value has really grown significantly, and they're going to pivot out of this and say there's easier ways to make money and coming back in. And for the people that are serious about this, those are not bad things.
No. Well, even
in there,
even the ones that don't really want to shut their doors, but they leverage the value of the property, they sell it, and they move 15 miles outside of town.
That's correct.
Yeah,
that's correct. I mean, and certainly you can do, and some of the things. I mean, that was how American got moved from where it was to where it is, was, through a buyout, and the people that were, was being bought by people that the city's willing to work with to get us moved to where you needed to be. And, so I think there are certain components of that happen, and there are certain components of it that the people are just rather to cash it out and coming in. And a lot of other instances, there's not a lot of estate planning that goes in, and it's a lot easier to split up cash than it is to split up a business and
all these moving parts
and have that come in. And then when you really start to see about, are people honest? I mean, I see a lot of facilities where they think their kids are ready to just hand them the keys to the kingdom, and that's a way bad move.
Yeah.
And other instances where they think their kid's a complete idiot, it's like, man, he's a superstar. Just get out of their way, let her do her thing, and you'll be way better off. In there. So it's balancing and finding all of that. But for the people who want to work, the people who are going in, I think it's still a huge opportunity to go in. We're not going to see the double-digit growth that we had for those periods of time. We're going to see some resizing, of things that are coming in. There's going to be some adjustments, and you're going to have to keep the model right-sized, right? Understanding, right? I've spent, 30 years attending or leading peer groups now. And during those 30-year period of time, we have nonstop talked about grow, buy more cars, you can grow. And for the last year, we've been talking about the opposite side of that, which is, look, if we can't grow anymore, this is what we need to be looking at expense-wise and really being dialed in to being disciplined and going back and doing it. And I think that's one thing that as auto recyclers, we tend to get to do what we want. Right, we get to make up the rules, right? I mean, there's a lot of that stuff that's just really cool. There's a lot of that is potentially dangerous for us as well. And now's not a time to be freelancing off. It's now a time to be matter of being dialed in on what your percentages are, managing accordingly, and run your business right.
What do you? Cause there seems to be no shortage of people crying that the sky is going to fall. I think that there's still plenty of opportunity, like you do. What do you think are some of the pitfalls? Like if you were talking to a group and you say, just keep an eye on this, be careful of that.
Look, there are certain people that are leaning deeper into the EV stuff than what I probably would be comfortable with.
Yeah.
Right? It's not good salvage, right? The number 1 and 2 sellers are engine and transmission, and the electric cars don't have that, right?
Yeah.
So, although in Hollander language they do, because a motor is I mean, we're going to come in, right? There's an old, deceased famous motorsports rider named Chris Economaki, and one of his big things was there's a difference between an engine and a motor.
Sure.
And everybody uses them interchangeable, and that's fixing to come back to haunt us, because in Hollander language, an engine and a motor, electric motor, are the same thing. And in our world, a car has one engine, and in motors there could have multiples. There's all kind of dynamics that change the pace.
But at the end of the day, those EV motors aren't.
It's not good salvage.
Wearing out.
They're not wearing out. It's not good salvage and coming back in. So I think that depending on what you do and the things that are there, I think are somewhat, problematic from that. But you still look, the age of the American fleet is older now than it's ever been. All right. If you look at it, it's somewhere around a 2017 model car right now. If you look at this, by the time there's a lot of engines and transmissions that we're still going to be selling and moving back in. I think that the price of salvage versus the part prices are disconnected, right? How does that tighten itself back up? Well, look, those are market conditions and coming back in as the economy of the world kind of gets itself straightened out. The export markets look at what it is, and there is still a very legitimate question where. Look, there's a lot of my life that I spent in social studies class that I'd like to get back, because they made me memorize countries that no longer exist. Right. If you really want to learn your geography, watch a Copart auction, right? Because you'll see some numbers are rolling by the places that are coming up, and you will get a geographical lesson like there is no tomorrow. And it is a very, very legitimate question of how many of those international buyers do those cars actually leave the country.
Yeah.
Right. How many of them are just recycled back through and coming back in for doing that? And everybody talks though the branded titles and what does it do and whatnot. But there is a question of when does it tighten up and the margins become on the salvage become more restored back into something that's a tad bit more sustainable.
When I was at Progressive, I mean, obviously it was going back 25 years, but if you got 13% return on salvage, you were good. And now it's 23, 25, 27%.
Look, one of the things that we did was we had a State Farm parts harvesting contract. And it was really a slick deal. And we had it in the DFW market, and we also had it in the Kansas City market. And we were given 100 cars a month. Cars had to be hit in the front. They have a very specific profile for it. So nothing that was any remotely could be considered a builder came in under the contract. And it was a revenue sharing program, right, where we parted the cars out for 6 months. At the end of 180 days, we gave State Farm 60% of the revenue that they produced. What was left was ours to combat it. So I had a State Farm inspector that was just, he was all over me. Every couple of days he was over there wanting to look at stuff. And they're a bunch of wrecked cars. Ain't nothing happened to him.
He had a job to justify.
And he was kind of a jerk. But I heard him on the phone griping about the rerun stuff and when it sold for less money and making Copart eat the cars eat the differences and the things that are going along in all of that stuff. But that's when you really, and just kind of eavesdropping into his conversations is when you really got the idea of how much auction controls, how much the insurance company controls, And it really gets pointed out quickly that the auto recycler is a complete and utter idiot if they think they're anything more than the money, right? We continue to think we're the customer. We're not. We're not. We're the money. The customer is the person selling the car, right?
That's
we're
right.
merely the money. And when we don't like it, right? There was an infamous case of a deal of a number of years ago that LKQ used to get an extra day or two of storage out of IAA that other recyclers didn't get. And as the story goes, IAA told them they're pulling the storage. They're making them on the same deal as everybody else in there. And so LKQ boycotted buying cars from IAA for 2 weeks or whatever, right? So they go back into Chicago to the meeting for IAA and ready to prove their point. And, and meanwhile, IAA kind of already knew what had happened and the deal. And so, the Mike story, the Mike story doesn't have to be accurate. It's the Mike story, right? In there. But the Mike story says that the LKQ guy says, well, what do you think? And the IAA guy says, about what? And LKQ says, we haven't bought a car in the last 2 weeks. And IAA goes, oh, really? Bob, take it from here. And Bob pulls up the screen and says, how many cars did we sell? Same number of cars. What's the ACV recovery rate? Same. I'm sorry, what were you saying about not buying cars?
Yeah.
Right, somebody else bought the cars.
Of course.
So it's not like they're,
if you stop bidding, there's 15 guys behind you.
That's right. That's
an auction.
Right. That's what it is. And it comes back in, and all of a sudden you hear things like, oh, it was easier to buy cars today. Right? Oh, yeah, they awarded more cars to me for some reason today. Yeah. So, you come back in to see, what's that, what's next, on that horizon. And who can find, because look, it's still in the history of the salvage industry, the money's made on the buy side. Always has been, always will be.
Same on the wholesale side. You make your money when you buy.
That's right. When you make
a bad buy. By the way, we used to have a saying in the auction world that said first money's best money. And that's easily a 95% correct statement.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Yep, that's correct. The other stuff just dilutes its way down and becomes a little bit more problematic in the grand scope of things.
Man, well, so what's going on? What do you have on for 2026? Anything?
Look, it's the same of the stuff. It's a good time to be me, right? It's a the times as an auto recycler are not the best.
Yeah.
So, and I do think that I've probably been, look, ego's never been my problem in the grand scope of things, but I'm probably positioned to be the foremost expert in how to make money in the auto recycling, deal. So if you're struggling, I can usually be the one, to help. So
are you still looking at expanding into more groups, or
look,
like how much can't duplicate Mike Kunkel? I mean, how many groups can you run?
No, and there is more bandwidth in all of that. Look, I have a no problem. The guy that makes my schedule and the guy that does the work don't always get along.
And that's both you.
That's both me. So in there, but I have a no problem, right? I mean, I like to run. I don't do good, sitting around doing nothing. I get asked a lot that, when am I done? And not until I can find something, but I'm doing exactly what I want to do.
Sure.
So it's really hard to think of doing anything any different than what I'm doing. So there is more groups, there's more stuff, in there. At the same time, I've got Rob and Jer with me, and they're coming along, and they're working really well with the sales teams and a lot of the mentoring.
Do you guys run those peer groups together, or do each of you have your own?
We all have our own lane
okay.
of where it is, and I'm in the peer group deal, and look, everybody does their site visits, and because look, there's a lot of that stuff is you got to drink the Kool-Aid, and you get along with somebody, you don't get along with somebody, you hear what they say, you don't hear what they say, in there. So it's a personality thing. So everybody does that. Rob is really good with the salespeople, in there. So what he's got going there is really, really outstanding, and he's really not all that hip on traveling. And
I guess what I was asking is, does Rob work with the salespeople that are part of your peer group, or do you guys have separate groups?
It's all separate. They're completely in, and he builds his own groups his own way.
So you're flying under the same banner, but he's building his group, Jer's building his group, you building yours, right?
Philosophically, we align.
Yeah. Right.
On there, but
you're not contradicting each other on any.
Not really, no. Yeah. I mean, but at the same token, everybody speaks their mind, right? Those are three very outspoken, individuals.
I don't know Jer very well, I know Rob's got opinions.
Well, yeah, and yeah. So and none of us are afraid, and and look, and I said Jerry is very. He's much more the softest touch.
Yeah.
Of everybody. At the same time, he's the newest to doing it too. So one of the things, Ron Sturgeon told me one time, 9 years ago. He said you need to toughen up your message delivery. And I said, look.
Wait, was there a time when you were a soft deliverer?
Apparently.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah, but look, and I have softened up when when there's two people. You have somebody else to be the nice guy.
Good cop,
when you're
bad
by
cop.
yourself,
Yeah.
there is no. It's what you got. So we have softened to some stretch. But one of the things that comes with, the longer you do this, you can be tougher because the money's not at this point in time. The money's always important. Right? My wife has a very high tone lifestyle. She expects to be maintained. Right.
Yeah.
So that part doesn't go without question, but this is way more than about money to all of us.
Sure.
Right? We're doing what we want, we're having fun doing it, and we are making positive impacts on people's lives, which is really what at the end of the day, kind of what the whole world needs a lot more of, is positive impacts on people's lives, making it better.
Who were some of the most influential? I mean, you've talked a lot about Jim Counts. Who were some of the most influential people?
Well, I mean, if you look at some of the baselines, I mean, it all starts with my dad is where most of my drive is really driven from, right? I mean,
You guys were tight? Were you tight?
Fought like cats and dogs. My dad had a lot of blemishes, but he was still my superhero, into it. And he never had any respect for yes men, only surrounded himself with yes people. But that was never me. So we had our own, things of how things worked and deal. Like I said, John Castle from Northwood was of the utmost importance to me. I said I have, Sturgeon claims me as a mentee when it's convenient, and when it's not, he doesn't. In there, because while I worked for Ron, I was more adversarial with Ron. On that, there was one of the founders in the buy here, pay here car lot business was named Lynn Smith, was a hero of mine. He had an accountant that stole a bunch of money, caused an IRS problem, and he was $1 million in debt to the IRS, back taxes, interest, and penalties, and was forced to file personal bankruptcy. And we dug our way out of his bankruptcy in a year.
Wow.
Of there, I learned so much about making money that year, because making a nickel made all the difference in the world when you're in the Grand Canyon of debt, like what he was in. So that was really important. And then like I said, when I got to, with the Jim Counts, component of it, and then really when we met James Jr. from Highway, and then me and Barry and the three of us just became in there, and from there, it just kind of branched out to there's big chunks of the, the PRP, network that we spent a lot of time with, with a lot of those people,
right.
and one of the things now is, look, my wife is just amazed at how many weddings we get invited to, right, of the back. And I'm still, I guess I do too, because, when you stop and think about.
I think it goes back to what you said about changing people's lives.
That's it. You're incorporating, and if they think enough of what we're doing together to invite you to their wedding is that's high. Is a really big deal.
It is a big deal.
In there, and that's when they say, I can't believe you come cross country. It was like, I can't believe you invited us.
Absolutely.
Right? The least I could do is, it's not like it's just the next airplane for me. It's not it's not a big deal.
So, if you're comfortable telling me, who are some, can you point to some rags to riches, some people that really did a great job of turning things around or something?
Well, look, you got to start that conversation with Sturgeon, right? He wrote a bad check for a gallon of milk when milk was $1.25 a gallon, right? So he is truly the rags to riches, drag him, success story, right?
I'd love to get him on a podcast.
Yeah. Well, he loves to talk about himself, so I'm sure he would do it. The deal, Lynn Smith, it was $1 million in debt and ends up owning a Chevrolet dealership at the end of his, they were sold for $35 million. At the end, that's a success story that you come in, and then you look at, some of the other stories that you hear of a Benny Cunningham and Cunningham Brothers, where, they get run out of the family business and then end up buying it back from their uncle, at the end in a rags to riches. And, some of the other things where you look at, the Michael Pearsons from the Arizona Auto Parts that are multi-generations.
Yeah.
I mean, over 100-year-old company still trucking along. But the things that they have done and the expansions that they have made from that, you look at some of like the Bionics and what the Catalanos from their grandfather through the dads to now Anthony and Junior to what they've accomplished. And while those are maybe not necessarily a short-term rags to riches story, but those are the longer terms and the things of coming in. And not all of those businesses
and just
have been financially good the entire time.
But surviving that multi-generational handoff is pretty significant. You touched on it earlier. What are some of the things that you've seen through those multi-generational businesses that were kind of some secret sauce that made it work well? And what are some of the pitfalls that have just absolutely torpedoed some family businesses?
Look, entitlement is a big deal, right? I mean, everybody needs to understand that when you walk in the door, your first name, right? That last name don't mean diddly squat, right? Sometimes the last name's a boat anchor around your neck.
Both sides of that to realize that,
both
right?
Sides.
Yeah.
Both sides.
Yeah.
Right, there is no entitlement
if you treat
to this.
your son like he's got that last name and he acts like he's got that last name, that's kind of a cancer.
That's correct. It builds back in. So, I mean, when you start seeing in people that are openly communicate, cast the vision, one of the things that I don't, look, I'm not that smart. What I am is not afraid to fail. But I've flamed out in some pretty big public. I've had to write a letter of apology for snookering LKQ on a fax program with Allstate one time that they read in front of every DRP shop in Dallas-Fort Worth. Right? I mean, you talk about red-faced. Half the guys are making fun of me, but half the other guys are calling me patting me on the back saying I'm a genius. Right? So, you go through those things, and in the end, nobody remembers. Nobody cares. Right? So you boil down to say the mistakes that you made and how you go back. But one of the things to do is failure to clarify the direction that we're traveling is one of the biggest problems. And then when you have businesses that declare the direction and then don't adhere to it, right? Then those become the problems. And the ones that are successful are the ones that can corral that, train that in, and work on it. I mean, one of the things that's happening now, and this is kind of up in really more in Jer's alley, but the EOS traction type business management strategy sweeping through the recycling industry right now. Well, what is that? Well, it's a management design that keeps everybody in their lane. It's a process keeps everybody focused and on point. That requires discipline, right? And so when you come to an industry that doesn't have a lot of discipline,
you're talking about employee-owned.
No.
What was EOS?
EOS is the book traction. It's a management style. That's EOS. Okay, there's a number of facilities that are transitioning to it. Jer is a disciple of the EOS.
What is the significant difference?
It gives a vision. And then it gives the parameters of the vision, and then it assigns those to people for accountability and keeps everybody on track, right? And that's where it works in the recycling industry, because you're talking about a bunch of people who are footloose and fancy-free at everything that they're doing.
Just create some structure.
Create structure, right? For somebody like me, an EOS system never really did much for me because I'm very disciplined. I have things to do. I get my things done.
Stands for? That's fine. Don't worry about it. I'll find out. But yeah. That's interesting.
I do. If you wouldn't have asked me, I could have told you.
You'll think of it when you walk out the door.
Employee operating system.
Is that it?
I believe that's what it is.
Okay.
And like I said, it's just basically kind of a thing that comes down and says, because look, one of the things that ends up getting us in trouble, and especially in the small business, right? When you start talking, look, PRP uses a vernacular that I really like called big, bigger, biggest. Okay. And that way nobody gets their feelings hurt. But a big yard has $20,000 a day or less in revenue. A bigger yard is 40 to 20, and over 40 is a biggest, right? So everybody in there, and it's a very simple way to talk. Nobody has to declare which category are you in. Just a very simple thing. But if you go into that big category, people wear 8 different hats. They're the HR guy, they're the buyer, they're the chief mechanic on the forklift, and the accounting person, right? So they're doing all of those things in there. And so they're bouncing around. How well do they actually stay with what it is that they're doing becomes a key component of it. And how do you stay on point, on task? How do you get those things done? The people who are good at that tend to be successful, and the people who struggle with that tend to show the results, right?
Yeah.
Who runs the company? Right, that's a big thing, right? In most instances, the sales team runs the company.
Sure.
Right, that's not necessarily the wisest. Right, in a list of worst to best, right? Lawyer's the worst guy to run the company. Why? They're risk adverse.
Risk adverse.
Right. What do they do? Don't sell airbags. Don't sell suspension. Boom. Right? Who's next worst? Accounting. Why? Because 1 + 1 always equals 2. In the real world, doesn't. Over the course of time, it does.
Right.
But how we get there is a little bit different, right? Third worst is a salesperson. Why? They're yes people. We can do that. Oh, we'll do that. We'll do that. Next thing you know, we're jumping through the moons, and we can't accomplish that, right? You need somebody who's process-oriented, somebody who understands the bigger picture.
Right.
Those tend to be a little bit more production-based.
Yeah. It's good stuff. Well, man, I think, is there anything else you want to talk about?
No. Really do appreciate you having me in here. This has been a fun
This has been my pleasure.
Fun time.
I was looking forward to this, and it did not disappoint.
Yeah.
So, but just thank you so much. I know you're going to get on a plane here and keep going, and that's just your deal, isn't it?
Look, I did the last 2 years. I've been on the road 150 nights a year, and that's probably a tad heavier. Than what I want. So, but anything less than 125, I start to go stir crazy.
Yeah.
So, on the road, keep moving. And look, it's a great time to be an auto recycler, and all you can really have. Look, this is one of the things my dad told me a long time ago. He said, "Son, I'm going to give you the greatest gift I can possibly give you. Here's the world. Go make a living in it."
Oh, I love that.
And when you stop and think about it, man, you talk about laying a golden egg at your feet. Right, and coming back in to say you can be anything you want to be if you roll your sleeves up and go do it. And in the auto recycling business, that's still true to this day. Still true to this day. All you do is put in the work. If you work hard enough, you're smart enough at it, the results will come.
I say if you work hard, do what you say you're going to do. Live with integrity so people know they can trust you, and be likable. There's not much you can't do.
No, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, Vince. Thank you.
All right.